Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Simply Soccer podcast. As you know, I'm Dave, and we do these podcasts typically once a week, typically on Saturday, like today, answering your questions, going over some topics in more depth, some topics that we may have covered in some videos, some topics that I may have never covered in a video. It really all depends on what comes up, what your questions are, or what I want to talk about. So that is generally what we go over in these podcasts. Some quick announcements as usual. Do I even have an announcement? I need to start writing these things down. Nothing really too crazy. I am, again, still thinking about a couple series to do. I'm definitely want to do some more kind of Q&A stuff, which is why I want to start doing live streaming. We will not be doing live streaming this week. I know I kind of said I was going to do it last week, but I wasn't able to do it. But if we do start live streaming, we might start doing them in place of podcasts where they will be very similar to podcasts. They're going to be very similar to this. They're going to be about the same length. They'll be going over similar topics, answering your questions. The main difference will be is you guys can be there live with me and ask me questions in real time and, interact with me in real time, which I just think is a much cooler thing than just recording something, pre-recording something and putting it out. Like this podcast, I still enjoy doing this because it allows me to gather my thoughts and be a bit more organized with it, where in live, I kind of have to do everything off the cuff, but there's kind of a magic in that as well. So the live streams may replace the podcast sometimes. Maybe some weeks we'll do live streams, some weeks we'll do podcasts. We'll find some kind of groove. Maybe we'll do both. The only thing is then that would mean we'd miss out on a regular video on Sunday. But that's kind of the main announcement. I am looking into doing that possibly. I definitely want to start getting live streaming done. The reason I'm struggling at the moment is because my laptop actually died. And so I have my PC, which has no webcam or anything. So I would have to live stream with my phone and set it up in where my room and my computer is. And that's a little difficult to do just because of kind of the lighting and everything. So I'd need to figure out how to do that. But I'm sure it's doable. We'll figure it out. So that's about it for announcements. There are other series coming along. As the temperature starts getting warmer again, which honestly will be a while, although it was 65 degrees today where I am in Pennsylvania, which is really warm for this time of year. It was like 30 the day before, and it's going to be 30 tomorrow, but it was like 65, so that's cool. Anyway, let's not go too far off topic here. So what are we going over today? Well, I actually picked out a few of the things that you guys mentioned in your comments. I do look at them. And here's a few things I want to cover today. Hopefully we get to all of them. And if we do get to all of them, I will, talk about something else as well. First one is what to do if your family doesn't support you in playing soccer, support you in playing football. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there's other things as well, but we'll talk about that. I think it's very important to kind of get the right mindset when that kind of thing appears. What to do when you're injured. I've been getting a lot of you who are currently injured or who are being injured or are coming back from injury. And, you've been asking me, what to do when this is going on. So I want to give you some suggestions, some advice for that, what I used to do, or what I did well and what I did not do well, so you can avoid the not so well things, and how to improve your tactical awareness. I remember someone mentioned this in the last comments section on the last podcast, and we'll go over a few ways you can improve tactical awareness. I have gone over this before, but I'm sure a nice reminder, and there may be a different angle or perspective from me on that. So let me just check my mic real quick. Just been bothering me. Okay. All right. So let's dive into it. I don't know how long I'm going to spend on each topic. Again, I'm going to try and keep this to be around 30 minutes, but we'll see if that happens. Anyway, so what to do if your family doesn't support you playing soccer? So I think the first thing to do when you think this is happening is first determine if that's the case. I think a lot of people jump to the conclusion if their parents aren't doing as much as this other kid's parents are doing, that they're not supporting them. Your parents may be supporting you just fine with your career as a footballer, and you're just not seeing it, or you're not taking advantage of the opportunities you have. Because I used to think this a lot when I was a kid. I used to think my parents were not contributing that much to my soccer career as a kid. But, you know, when I really look back, they took me to soccer practice pretty much every time. They took me to games. They took me to college showcase tournaments out of state. You know, they took me, you know, hours and hours away from home, you know, all over the place in order to play football. So when I really reflect upon it, sure, there's always that kid whose parent, you know, goes to the extreme and, you know, travels across the country for their kid or pays a bunch of money to put them in an academy. Not every parent can do that, by the way. That's a very, very small group of people. Or, you know, the one who was outside training with their kid every day. And that's great. And I love that level of commitment. But the fact of the matter is most parents will not be doing that. And you kind of have to put it into perspective. So when I look back and I reflect upon it, I'm really grateful for my parents and what they did for me because, again, they took me to my training. They took me to my matches. You know, they drove me all over the place in order to support me in, you know, becoming a better footballer. You know, when I joined a much better team and I was traveling to college showcase tournaments outside of state, and going, you know, all over the place, they would take me there. You know, there were times when we would have to be up at wherever the location was and, you know, stay in a hotel with the team, and they'd have to take time off work. So when I really put it into perspective, my parents were great with supporting that part of me. Now, again, you may be in a completely different situation, but just first and foremost is put it in perspective. Are they really not supporting you? Because they really might be, and you have to kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit. You know, they have their own lives and they can't just give up work in order to support what you're doing. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't want you to play the victim. I don't want you to grow up and get older and then say, I didn't make it because of my parents. I mean, come on, there are kids that are living in Africa right now, or lived in Africa who grew up in the most impoverished situation you could possibly imagine, or imagine the most impoverished situation you could imagine, and then multiply it by 10, and they were in that situation, and yet they still ended up becoming a pro. So it's not all about, you know, if your parents support what you're doing financially, or if they support you by taking you to your training every single week, or your games. You know, if there's a will, there is a way. There are so many players that travel themselves and figure out how to get buses, or they travel with teammates or whatever to get to their matches when their parents can't do it. You know, if your parent won't kick around with you, I mean, come on, that's the worst one. That's one I used to use, but I still would practice with myself. I still would go out to the field by myself. That is also not an excuse. Oh, my parent didn't put me in the best academy and won't, you know, give me the money to go to an academy. That's a terrible excuse as well. You know, that's one, not guaranteed you're going to become a pro or a high-level player because you go to an academy. Of course, yes, it's good level training, but in America, you know, the system here, in my eyes, is just completely broken when it comes to these things. I'm near where the Philadelphia Union does a lot of their training, and especially for their youth teams. And apparently it costs a lot of money to get in there. I don't know how, I mean, I haven't looked too much into this, but I know certain academies cost a lot of money to get your kid in there, which I think is backwards. You know, shouldn't it be based on how good the player is? You know, because I know in Europe, like if you're good enough, you come in, like they help you with your education. You know, some places give you a room and board. They support the family. It's not the other way around. It's not the family supports the club and then your kid gets to go in the academy. It's the club supports the family. And then they'll take your kid who they've recognized as a talent or someone they think could potentially become a pro footballer and nurture that kid. So it is a bit backwards in America, to be fair. But here's the thing with this thing, what to do if your family doesn't support you. Get used to it, because you're going to go through a lot of the trials and tribulations of trying to become a better player, where you need to step up and support yourself and recognize that your success or your ability to get better really only comes down to you. Now, I know some of you may have families where it's incredibly strict and disciplined, where they won't even let you play. Maybe. I don't know your situation. But I have a feeling a lot of you are saying your parents don't support you because they don't drive you to things, or they don't pay for certain things that help you as a footballer. If that's the case, I mean, that I get it. You know, when you look at the kid who is, their parents are paying for everything and they're getting into academies because their parents are driving them everywhere and they're, you know, and all this blah blah blah. I get that's frustrating, because if your parents are not or can't, let's not forget that they may just not be able to. That is frustrating. But the thing is, you have to do the best with what you have. You just do. You know, your situation isn't going to magically change unless, well, it's not going to magically change, period, but nothing's going to change unless you will it to change, unless you go out and do something. Like, your ability to improve as a player is seriously down to how often you go out and train, how much you research what's going to get you to that next level, how much you decide to dedicate towards your improvement. Look at, you know, so many of the famous players down the years and how little they had growing up, and yet they went on to become incredible footballers. You know, one of the things I love about football is it's the world's game for a reason, because you can play it anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're rich and you play at the best facilities, or if you're dirt poor and you can barely afford a ball, or you can't afford a ball and the only way you play is you have that one friend who has a ball and you guys kick around all the time. It doesn't matter. It's a sport for the poor man, the rich man, the middle class man, the whatever man, the everyone. It's the sport for the human, essentially, to make that really cheesy. But why this is good for you is because you don't need much to improve. You don't need much to get better. You don't need the fancy facilities. You know, I used to use a parking lot. You know, plenty of players would just use a wall. I mean, the amount of training you can do with like some space and a wall is amazing, the amount you can do. You can do so much. If you just looked up, I mean, all of you have access to the internet and YouTube, so I'm going to assume that you at least have some things. You know, you at least, you know, have a ball at the very least. But you have access to YouTube and the internet. You could compile your own routine, go to a wall and practice that very often. You have so much access to information and routines and drills and diet plans and fitness plans and all of this stuff that there really isn't any excuse for you not to put in the time to improve. And I really think this whole my parents are not supporting me thing is an excuse for you not to go out there and actually do what you need to do to get better. Now, again, I'm not pointing at anyone specifically because I don't know what your situation is. All I know is I grew up, and at times as a kid, I used to think my parents were not supporting me that much in my pursuit of becoming a better footballer. But looking back now upon reflection, I go, wait a second, they did. You know, they did a lot for me. You know, some kids don't even have their parents available to drive them to practices or matches. I had that. I had them drive me all over different states to play in different tournaments. They took me to different camps, you know, paid for those camps. You know, there's so many things. Again, even if you're not at that point, you can always take a look and go, at least, you know, they're helping me do this. And again, even if they're not supporting you one bit, and there comes a time when you can't rely on them anyway, and you have to just go out and tell yourself it's up to you. I mean, like that video I mentioned, it's your fault, the motivational video about it's your fault. What you do and what happens to you and the actions you take are your fault. They're your responsibility. Meaning, if you go, it's my parents' fault because they didn't support me, that I didn't become good, that's just you kidding yourself. It's you justifying why you didn't go out and do the training. So if your family doesn't support you, quote unquote, do the best with what you have. Whatever situation you're in, do the best with what you have. Your circumstances may improve. You know, again, I don't know what your actual circumstances are. There may be some of you that are legitimately complaining over nothing, and there may be some of you who are legitimately in a very crappy situation. I have no idea. But regardless of which one it is, do the best with what you have. Find a way to do it. You know, if you want to become better, find a way. That drive and determination and motivation you'll build just from finding ways to do things in a situation that's unfavorable or doesn't have the obvious answer right away is going to be something that becomes an asset to you later anyway. You know, that ability to have that grit and determination to find a way in a tough situation. You know, when the one kid does have access to the facilities, you find a way around that to still become better. That's only going to serve you. So, you know, went off the rails a bit there. Definitely went on some tangents. But if you think your family doesn't support you, or they legitimately don't, it doesn't matter. Don't use it as an excuse. Still get the training in. You know, don't use that as a justification. Because you don't need the academies, the fancy facilities, all that stuff. And if you do have access to those things, great. Yeah, take every advantage you can. you know, because someone who is not in your position would jump at the chance to take that opportunity. So I'm not saying if you have these opportunities that they're bad in any way. I'm saying if you do not, you still have control over whether you become a better player or not, right? Again, the mere fact that you have access to this podcast, meaning you have access to the internet, meaning you have access to YouTube, a database with billions upon billions of videos that can help you, means that your situation is probably not that bad. And that you can find what you need to improve. And, you know, that you don't always need your parents there to do it. You know, again, if your parents support you full-heartedly in your pursuit of becoming a better player, I mean, more power to you. That's awesome. And, you know, definitely, you know, don't take them for granted. You know, be very appreciative for that. But even if you have the crappiest parents, and again, I don't want to, this is just a very hypothetical. If you had the crappiest parents who hate football, you'd still be able to improve in that situation. Just depends on how you look at it, you know. Find a way, okay? Find a way, because in the end, you know, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years are going to go by, and you're going to wish that you found a way instead of complaining about someone blocking or preventing your way, for example. All right, so let's stop on that one before I go off too much. I just, you know, I've seen these excuses in myself as I've gone through life. And, you know, today, whenever I see excuses in myself, I try and analyze it. But because I've seen these excuses and I know these excuses are there and I know that there's nothing to gain from them, I just don't want you to fall into the same trap of making excuses to why you're not getting better or why you're not improving. Most of the time, it's go out and train is why you haven't been doing that. You know, you've been making excuses instead of taking action, blah, 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 all that stuff. Okay, so what to do if you're injured? Here's an interesting one. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I honestly think the answer to this is pretty obvious, and we don't need to spend too much time. Now, obviously, depending on what your injury is, the course of action is different from injury to injury, you know? For example, there are minor injuries that, you know, you may not even need to go see someone and you just need rest and you just need to, you know, keep an eye on it and you can be fine. Maybe you need to ice it. Maybe you need to just stretch in a different way, you know, whatever it is, do certain recovery movements. Then there are injuries that are more tricky. There are long-term injuries. There are persistent injuries. You know, there's all this stuff. So first and foremost, if you can, visit someone who knows what the hell they're talking about. When I hurt my back, I had no idea what I had done. And the worst thing I did during that period is I didn't go see someone who knew what they were talking about soon enough. You know, I waited too long. I waited like, I forget, like a month or two. And I was in like so much pain. And, you know, I never really had, like I'd had, you know, kind of medium, I don't know what to call it, like kind of bad injuries, but nowhere near as bad as this injury ended up being. But the worst thing I did was not immediately, when I knew something was wrong, go and see someone who knew the body, knew what it was. Because once you have awareness and you're aware of what you're dealing with, then you can set a plan of action. But when you're in the dark and you don't know what's going on, you don't know what to do. You know, you're like, well, can I do something? Do I just need rest? Do I need a specialist? Do I need to do certain stretches? Whatever it is. So the first thing is like, go see a physical therapist. Go see a doctor who will refer you to a specialist if you can. Now, I understand not everyone has access to these things, but do the best you can. Do your research. And I'm not a big fan of self-diagnosing yourself, especially if it's a big injury. But again, do what you can with what you have. The internet is a tool. You can even, I think there are like online, like real doctors who you can talk to online who can maybe help you out. But if you can, get it checked out. What I did is I did go to a doctor and he actually wasn't that much help. I got it x-rayed. That wasn't much help. And I went to a physical therapist, and I can't really praise physical therapists enough. They don't get enough credit. I don't think they're not seen as, I think, as knowledgeable for some reason as doctors, like if you just go to your general doctor. But I would disagree. I think they're much more knowledgeable when it comes to the human body, when it comes to muscles, tendons, bones, ligaments, all these things. Because I went there and he's like immediately, oh, you've done something to a disc in your back. Here, do these stretches. Did the stretches, and I walked out of there. I walked in there with a limp and pain in my right leg. I had sciatica. I walked out of there walking normally. Now, I was nowhere near done my rehabilitation, but he could immediately identify what it was and went, oh, okay, I know what you need. and gave me some stretches, some routines to do, told me what to do, how frequently to do it. And physical therapists can be cheaper too. So that's one thing, is go see a physical therapist. Ask around to find one if you need one. They're everywhere, really. But that's one option. But get some kind of professional opinion, if you can. Because the last thing you want to do is think it's one thing, completely misdiagnose it, and then end up hurting it further. So how to deal with them and what to do when you're injured then. So that's the first thing, is make sure you get some professional help, get a professional opinion. Asking me about injuries, like if you is not good, because I don't know. I can just tell you the general advice for dealing with an injury, which is plenty of rest, icing the area if that's applicable, maybe certain stretches, and then the first thing I'll tell you is go see a professional. Because they know, they've been there, done that, they have the experience. Just like this guy I went to, I described what was going on, and he seemed to know immediately what was going on because he'd seen it so many times. He'd be like, oh, okay, it looks like it's a back problem, probably one of the discs. I think you might have a slip disc or disc bulge, or something like that. So let's try some things like, So then he knew what it was. This is why we go to these people, right? They've been there, done that, they've seen it before. So that's the first thing you should do when you're injured. And we're going to go over the mental things as well. Next is, don't risk it. Okay, this is the big one. If you're anything like me, who is absolutely madly in love with football, loves playing it, hates missing opportunities to play it, especially when I was younger, when I had, my body would recover so quickly. If you're like me in that regard, you got to be careful, because I have a knack of pushing through pain to play sometimes, and that's just not a good idea. Like maybe I'll have a meaningless indoor match or something, like just an intramural league, and I'm like, well, I've got this pain in my knee and it's not going away, but I'll play anyway, because I just love to play. Maybe again, it doesn't matter what it is, but if you have that, just don't risk it. If you really think something is wrong, get it dealt with, because a 2-week injury, or something that could have been like you were just out for 2 weeks, you need to rest and ice it and just let it heal up, could turn into months of injury or months of layoff if you damage it further. The injury I sustained to my back was a nothing injury, but the reason I ended up making it really bad is because I kept playing on it. And eventually it got to the point where I'd done so much damage that I was out for months, almost a year. It could have been a simple thing where I was only out for like a few weeks, maybe a month of just rest, of get it better, do the stretching routine, whatever. And it ended up being a miserable 8 to 9 months. I mean, miserable. And that could have been prevented by just being smart, by just going, okay, my body's telling me something here, I should probably listen to it. So with injuries, if you think you have one, do what you need to do to identify what it is, and then the big one is, do not try and rush yourself back. I know it's frustrating, and again, if you're like me, it's the most frustrating thing in the world to be injured, because you just want to play. You've played your whole life, you love the sport, you want to keep going, you want to keep playing, you want to keep pushing, you can't. It's agonizing to see other people playing and you're not able, but it's just what you got to do. Your body needs the recovery time. It needs the rest. It needs to recover. So that's the first thing, is don't rush back, because don't think in the terms of instant gratification. You got to think long term here. The last thing you want to do is, say a doctor says you have to recover, you have 3 months until full recovery and you can play again, and you start playing after 2 months, re-injure it, and you're out another 3 months or 4 months. So now you're out like 6 months instead of 3. I mean, you just don't want that. You've doubled the time, and that's hypothetical, but you don't want to be in that kind of situation. And if you keep re-damaging the same area, it's going to, it's just going to make it weaker and weaker and weaker. It's going to take longer for you to recover. You're going to be more susceptible to injuring the same area again and again. So take the rest time you need. However, just because you're injured does not mean you don't have to do anything. There's always something you can do. Now, with certain injuries, there may actually be some exercises you can do. Maybe when you're injured, this is a chance to improve your flexibility. Usually if it's kind of a muscular injury, that might be not the best idea, depending on what it is. But if say the doctor, the physical therapist gives you some exercises, then you can do that and double down on that, because now you're not having practice, you don't have individual training. You know, use your time wisely to maybe do more stretches. You know, maybe you can do some workouts. Maybe you can go to the gym and do some lifts. You know, you can work upper body. Maybe you can't run, but you can do some other stuff. So, you know, with the professional, ask, okay, what can I do? You know, when should I know to stop? That's important. So if I feel pain here, should I have a time limit and only do this much? They'll give you a plan, most of them. I was given a stretching routine to do, a pretty comprehensive one with my injury, how often to do it. And he said, you can do it more if you want, you can do this, this, and this. Find that out and you can do what you can. You know, with some injuries, you'll be able to train a little more. Other injuries, you'll have to not train that much. Here are some other things you can do. We talk about the mental side all the time on this podcast, so why not work on that? Work on visualizing yourself injury-free and playing to the best of your ability. Work on things like learning as much as you can. Read some books. I mention books all the time. Read some books. Read some books I've mentioned. Read some books you've wanted to read. You know, don't just sit around and do nothing. Use this time. You know, you can always do something. Use something that when you are fit will benefit you. Maybe you can study some, you can get more analytical. You can study tactics. And we're about to go over this too, actually. You can, again, read some books. You can analyze your own game footage. You can, you know, do whatever. You can come up with some goals. Come up with some goals for when you're fit, right? So you can come up with some goals like long-term goals or short-term goals. You know, there's always something you can do. It doesn't have to be torture. You know, it doesn't have to be. So you can find things to do when you're injured that actually would benefit you. You know, meditation's a favorite of mine, visualization, learning, tactical awareness, obviously working on SimplySoccer. But do something. There's always something you can do. So ask yourself that question, what could I be doing? And if you want to make it soccer specific and actually work on your game and improve football in the meantime, ask yourself, what are some things I can do? What can I do to improve my game? Can I analyze professional footage? Can I watch as many professional matches as possible and actually analyze them? Can I watch some YouTube videos and learn more? Right? So that's what to do when you're injured. You know, there's other stuff you can do, of course, but I mean, the big thing is don't push yourself to the point where you're re-aggravating the injury. Just don't want to be there. Don't have a setback. Don't have a setback. Sometimes there are unforeseen setbacks that you have no control over. That can happen, but don't have a setback where it's just you being silly and you're trying to force it and you're like basically screaming at your body, recover faster, and then you just try and play and you're like, yeah, I'm probably fine, when you're not. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. It just isn't. I don't want to see you re-injure yourself. Just not a fun place to be. And, you know, just try and keep your spirits up as well when you're injured. You know, find ways to occupy yourself. Do things you like. It doesn't even have to be soccer related, you know? Like, I like reading, for example. You know, if I'm injured, I could just go, okay, this is good. I can just catch up on reading while I'm injured. You know, I can create more videos that are around different topics because I can't go to the field, for example. You know, you can find ways. All right, so let's move on. We're very quickly, since we're running out of time, going to go over how to improve your tactical awareness. And this is cool too, because if you're injured, why not improve your tactical awareness? Use some of the things that I'm about to go over to improve your tactical awareness while you're injured. And when you come back and you're fit again, you'll have all this new tactical knowledge that you didn't have before that you can apply to your game, right? You know, as you're building up your physical attributes again, you have those tactical attributes, that more knowledge of the game. You can read the game better. You know what to look for, you know? So that is that. So here's how to improve your tactical knowledge, and awareness. And I've gone over this before, so I am going to try and spend as little time on this and just give you a brief overview because I just have gone over it so many times. And the first one is watch as many high-level matches as humanly possible if you want to improve this quickly. EPL, World Cup when it's coming on, this summer, Euro in 2 years, African Cup of Nations, all the international tournaments, Champions League, I'm pretty sure I said Premier League, but okay, La Liga, El Clasico, Europa League even. You know, just watch football. Watch high-level football. Why? Because you're watching the best of the best play. And there's so much tactical effort that goes into these matches from both sides. So one of the things I like to do that I mention all the time is if I'm watching a game and I want to learn more about my position, for example, and I'm watching Liverpool, although they play in a system that might be hard for me to do this, but I may watch Firmino if he's playing in that number 9 role, false 9 kind of role, and if I want to play more like him, I'll analyze him during that game. I'll be like, what is he supposed to be doing tactically? What is Klopp trying to accomplish tactically here, right? I'll do that for other teams. I'll be like, okay, how are they setting up? You know, what is this player trying to do and why is he trying to do this? You know, you got to ask yourself questions. The more questions you ask and then you answer your own questions, sometimes you won't even answer them. You'll just keep asking the questions. The more your awareness will improve. The more you'll know what to look for. Okay, so the first and probably best one, or at least one of the best ones, is watch matches. And don't just watch them passively. You know, there's times, you know, if you just want to enjoy the match and just cheer and passively watch it, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I do that too. But if you want to actually get something out of it, you have to consciously be aware of everything that's going on and actually be analyzing things in real time and going over things, right? Try and guess what's going to happen next. Ask yourself what that player could have done better there. Ask yourself, why did that work? Ask yourself, like, what led to that mistake, or how did that happen? You know, and the more you do this, the more your awareness tactically will improve, and football IQ wise will improve. So that's one thing. Okay. Next is you have the internet, like we've been talking about, right? You have the internet. Use YouTube, right? There's tactical analysis videos of different players on my channel. There's tactical analysis videos on different teams' style of play. You can find ones where people play clips of the team doing the thing and then explaining it. You can find clips of kind of like animations of people going over what gegenpressing is or what tiki-taka really is and all these different tactics, all these different styles of plays, you know. What is total football? What is, you know, how does Conte like to set up his team, and what's the general theme of the way he plays? How does Mourinho, how does Pep Guardiola, you know, how do all these different people, how does Carlo Ancelotti when he was at AC Milan, how does Sir Alex Ferguson back in his day, Arsene Wenger. You know, you can find these things on YouTube, right? So you can look at my videos, for example, if you want to learn something about a different player's game. There's plenty of other channels. There are channels I've seen that are specifically built around just presenting you with tactical knowledge. I mean, the whole channel's purpose is tactics. Those channels exist. And there's, I think, plenty of them, you know. So if you want to increase your tactical awareness, it's going to be like it's the same way. It's exactly the same thing if you want to become a better footballer. What do you have to do to become a better footballer? Or what, if I was going to make a general blanket statement about how to become a better footballer, what would I say? It's go out and train. Go out and practice. Go out and do the work. Get a ball and go out and do it. If I was going to be as general as possible, right? If I was going to make the, you know, general blanket statement, go out and train, right? Take the action. So what would be the general blanket statement to improving your tactical awareness is going out and studying tactics. I mean, that's how you get better at it. Look at the YouTube videos that go over, this is what this person was doing tactically. This is what this player was doing tactically. Here is the tactic of a false 9. Here is the tactical idea behind a traditional target man. You know, whatever it is, tactical responsibilities of a holding midfielder. You know, whatever it is. You know, you can find all this stuff on YouTube. And then how do you increase your tactical awareness? You watch those videos. And you again, in the same way that when you watch the matches, you'll consciously be watching them and be aware and be focused and in the moment and present and actually paying attention, you do that with the videos. It's no good if you watch the video and your eyes glaze over and you're just using it as background noise, or you just go on to the next video right away and you don't actually take note of anything. You want it to stick. So actually be focused, pay attention, be present when that thing is happening. You know, again, maybe ask questions as it's going on. And that's how you improve your tactical awareness. Obviously, if you're talking about tactical awareness of a player as you're playing, your tactical awareness will also improve through experience of playing. You know, the more you play as a holding mid and the more instruction your coach is given and the more you follow through with that and the more you analyze your own games, the better at it you'll become. That as well. But as far as actually improving your tactical awareness off the pitch, I think watching the matches and being conscious while you do it is a great way to improve your tactical awareness. And then seriously using this amazing resource we have called YouTube to look at all these different great videos you could be looking at and studying those videos to learn more as well tactically and improve your tactical awareness. Okay, so there we go. What are we doing? 35 minutes. Okay, not bad. All right, guys, so that's been the Simply Soccer podcast. I need to start numbering these. I have no idea what number podcast this is. I never know how to title these podcasts. Honest truth. Like, I just title it based on one of the subjects we go over, but whatever. We'll figure that out. Anyway, we need a hashtag, don't we? Let's take a look. I don't know what to do. Let's do, I don't know. Hashtag, this should not be so hard. I don't want to do hashtag injured. That's stupid. We'll do hashtag awareness, even though I'm pretty sure we've done that before. But who cares? Hashtag awareness in the comments. Put that down there. It allows me to know that you've actually listened all the way to the end. I like to identify the people who have done that, who are actually committed to learning and committed to listening all the way through. That is awesome. You are awesome. Hashtag awareness down there in the comments. Also, if you have a question or comment yourself, based on something you want to see in the future in a podcast, just a general question you have or a general comment you have, if you put hashtag awareness with your comment or question, it is much more likely I will answer your comment or question or feature it in a podcast in the future, just because I would much prefer to feature the people who I know are actually supporting this channel and listening all the way to the end and actually are committed to improvement than the people who come here for 30 seconds, leave a question, and then just jump off. So hashtag awareness, guys. Hashtag awareness. Thanks once again for tuning in to this podcast. I really do appreciate you guys who, you know, stay for this longer kind of content and support the channel in that way and you know, allow me to continue doing this because I love doing it. I love sharing the experiences I've had. I love learning more and then being able to share what I've learned with you guys. It's really awesome. So thank you so much for your support. Please like and share this podcast as well. We don't have to do that, but you know, if you want, please do that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Let me know of other things you want me to talk about in these podcasts. Hopefully we'll have a live stream sometime soon. It will happen, I promise, at some point. It will happen. It will. He said to himself, unsure. No, it's going to happen. So look out for that. But if not, I will see you in the next video. Thanks again for tuning in. Peace.